A few housekeeping items to keep in mind. We're streaming the public portion of this meeting live on our YouTube channel. So if you happen to experience any technical difficulties with the live stream, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted and available on YouTube after the meeting. To those who are in attendance, your microphone has been muted, and I ask that you put your hand up if you would like to speak, and we will retain a list of speaker requests as we go. Once you're called upon to speak, please unmute yourself and proceed. We ask that you please always keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. As it relates to voting, please raise a hand to indicate your vote when a vote is called. Should you be disconnected from the video call, please rejoin using the link previously provided. And so I'd like to now begin the Peel Police Services Board meeting of March 26, 2021. Let's begin with a roll call. I believe all the board members are here, and Chief, your team is here as well. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, we will continue with the meeting. The first agenda item is the Chief's update. I'll now ask the Chief to provide the board with his update.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone. Pleasure to see all of you. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we appreciate very much the board's support recently for the authorization of reward for a homicide that is still unsolved. And as it pertains to that, I'm going to hand it over to Deputy Chief Nick Milinovich to speak to this.
Thank you, Chief, and through the chair, again, thank you to the board for authorizing that reward. You'll recall we requested permission for a $25,000 reward in relation to information on the Jacqueline Gore homicide. This was a homicide that occurred in 2019. Since then, the investigators have continued to relentlessly pursue any and all information that they received as a result or through that investigation, and have determined that she was not the intended target. This was an innocent 24-year-old young woman with nothing but promise ahead of her. And through the chair and with permission of the Police Services Board, would like to play the video. It's a video appeal that we have shared publicly with the hopes of encouraging people who we know have information to come forward and help us bring closure to the family.
Jacqueline Gore was a kind, loving, and respectful young woman. Had a bubbly and goofy personality. You would smile anytime you're present with her. She was a people's person, enjoyed spending time with family and friends. She wanted to travel the world, dreamt of becoming a clinical psychologist one day, start a family, and create more memories with her loved ones. Sadly, all this were robbed from her on the morning of July 8, 2019.
Jacqueline Gore was celebrating with friends at the Fume Bar and Lounge. Following the party, Jacqueline was in the parking lot making arrangements to get home when gunfire broke out. Jacqueline was tragically struck by a stray bullet and killed instantly. Following a lengthy investigation, we have determined that Jacqueline was not the intended target of the shooting.
July 8, 2019 turned out to be the most devastating day of Jacqueline's family lives. Jacqueline's family will not receive the closure they need until justice is served.
It's extremely important that we get the community's assistance in helping us solve this murder, to get justice for a family who's lost their daughter, their sister, and a friend. Please call the tip line at 905-565-5727 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS.
Catherine.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair. And I'm assuming and hoping everybody heard the audio on that. Again, we're going to continue and are committed to this investigation and bringing that closure that the family's looking for.
Thank you, Nick. And Mayor Crombie, sorry, I see you have a question.
No, that's okay. I'm just wondering what the success rate is when we offer these kinds of rewards. Does it encourage people to come out as it should?
It does. A big part of the success is how far we can push the message, which is why we've invested so heavily in the communications piece of this. We really need to get this message out to the community. And I can tell you, in terms of success and our hopes, it is receiving tremendous play. But again, I would encourage everybody here to use your social media platforms if you feel comfortable in doing so to help push that message out.
Mayor Crombie, we often say that the perpetrators in these type of incidents, they talk and they talk to somebody else, and somebody else has heard and knows. And, you know, we don't anticipate that the people who pull the trigger follow me on Twitter and saw the video. And to Nick's point, the more we get it pushed out exponentially, it will saturate into some of the community in the circles. Our corporate communications team is utilizing some really key media outlets to help push that through. The incentive of a reward sometimes is enough for somebody to drop even a vague piece of info is something for us to run with, which we would appreciate. With that, Chair Attia, I have no further updates.
Thank you very much. Do any other board members have questions? Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the first item of the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, February 26, 2021. Can I have a mover to approve the minutes? Mr. Bowden, can I have a seconder? I think Councillor Medeiros. All in favor? Okay, then that is carried. We'll next move on to deputations. Today there is a deputation written and submitted by Stop Racial Profiling Group. If we can, Rob, is that going to be shared? Is someone being invited to join?
So this is a written deputation. So it's been included in the agenda today for everyone to have read.
Thank you. Are there any comments regarding the deputation? Bonnie, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, the deputant raises some very interesting points. So I wonder, is it appropriate here to address some of the questions they raised? And, you know, not that it's our level of government that would make these kinds of changes, but with respect to mandatory limits on keeping information and stigmatizing people with mental illness over the long term and affecting their careers and livelihoods, etc. They're recommending that a 2-year maximum limit on holding this kind of information across police forces after that occurrence reports destroyed and purged, and greater accountability on people making these kinds of claims. You know, it's almost the onus is to prove yourself credible rather than the reverse, that the onus is on, no onus on the individual to prove their claim that you know, you may have mental health issues rather. I apologize. Is anyone can comment on some of the recommendations and claims that are made in the deputation? I mean, I think it is something worth thinking about.
Mayor Crombie, I'll happily begin the conversation, and then I may ask either Anthony or Sharon to speak to records retention as it relates to police records. But the way I see it is there's several different elements to this deputation. You know, first and foremost is, you know, if people need help in the community and they call us, we go, and we make a discernment at the moment about what type of assistance they may need. So, any record of contact with somebody who has a mental illness, I almost think that, we're, first of all, we'd never use it to negatively stigmatize somebody. It would never enter somebody's the course of their employment or any contact with a third party should they have any interaction with us that is a mental health or health related incident. It would never impact their course of employment. And as such, really the concern that, interactions with us are going to stigmatize them further. I just really want to make sure that we're in this position where the more information we have about people who have needs in the community is actually better. You've heard me speak to, sadly, the tragic loss of life last year in a police interaction with the person who had mental health. We know that that individual had, 20 or 30 interactions with us preceding that fateful day over a course of time. And what we're trying to do with that information now is actually using the fact that we're continually seeing people is diverting them to appropriate care way before the health crisis. And the perfect example is Deputy Andrews intends to, in April, present on our situation tables here in Peel. And the way the situation tables work is that we're able to say, hey, look, we've been to Nish Duriapa's house X amount of times for mental health. What can we do to provide help? So I almost want to pivot to the point is that we're now at a point where the information is valuable for us to off-ramp people, and our ability to have that information and use it in a very health-oriented way is really the appropriate application of contacts. We too don't want to see people unnecessarily, and we hope that should we ever have to have contact with somebody that has or needs mental health support, that it's in the most appropriate circumstances. So I just kind of want to speak to the value of information, and now just to add further confidence just in this forum, because it's a public forum, that we can actually shed some light on how thoughtful our records and information are. Maybe can I ask Anthony and Sharon maybe to speak to that? Anthony, as it pertains to, he's oversight of records, and Sharon as it pertains to the regulations in our policies.
Thanks, Chief. You hit on most of the points from the records management aspect of it, and in particular with the release of information on a records check. This type of information that has been pointed out in the deputation does not qualify for release of information. And so the information is actually about the occurrence and would be used in the case that Chief Duriapa just mentioned to off-ramp or look for upstream activities to try to negate another experience from Deputy Andrews' team, particularly in community safety and well-being. So again, just to reiterate, from a online records check, which I'll be speaking to momentarily, or a records check, this information isn't released to the public.
And excuse me, but that includes if they had been Form 1? And so that it's
yes, because the record. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, because the records that we release speak to criminal records checks for members of the community who come in and request that of themselves for jobs, as been indicated in the deputation here, or voluntary positions, or other positions within the community that require it. So.
And Mayor,
well, you raise an interesting point. So if someone is required to do a police check for even a volunteer activity, perhaps you want to be a parent volunteer at your child's school, but once upon a time, 3 years ago, you were suffering from some mental illness and your partner called you or what took you to CAMH under a Form 1, would that show? No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sharon. I'll let you take it.
I was just going to say that the Police Records Checks Reform Act now governs all police services across the province. I don't think this would have been released previously regardless, but it has fairly tight restrictions on what can be released, even as it pertains to non-conviction criminal information. So it really is tightly guided by that. And just to sort of jump on what the chief was saying with regards to, for our perspectives, having more information, we're also subject to Coroner's Act recommendations that have come out, and this is sort of a constant issue that comes out in Coroner's Act recommendations, is that police services should be gathering as much of this information so that officers, when they're called to attend, have this information to try to avoid those circumstances in the future. So that's something to consider, the fact that we keep it but don't release it, and we need it to try and assist the person as best as we can.
Wonderful, thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll move to receive the deputation. Can I have a mover? Mayor Crombie, and a seconder, Vice Chair Chada. So all in favor? Okay, then it is carried. We'll now move on to presentations. Our next item is a presentation of the Peel Regional Police Innovation and Technology Strategic Roadmap, which will be provided by Deputy Chief Eduardi. Please, Deputy Chief.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, and good morning to all. I have with me today, and focusing on the IT roadmap, is Mr. Tony Ventura, our IT director. Current IT director, newly promoted into the role as of a couple months ago, and we are so very happy to have him. I will discuss that more in a moment. And with us, we also have Mr. Charles Payette from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who we contracted with in order to scope out and deliver on our innovation and technology roadmap. And really, I'm going to turn it over to them, and I'm going to share my screen. But before I do, I really need to let the board and community know that one of the main points of emphasis when I first arrived here, now almost 10 months ago, was to understand not just how technology and innovation impacts our members and the community, but what we have here in terms of initiatives, what we have had on the horizon, and what we were able to execute on current state and moving forward. And this directly impacted and will impact the effectiveness of PRP moving forward. And so one of the main, the first things that was on my radar was to do this assessment. And partnering with PwC shed quite a bit of light on where we were and where we are going. And I'll let our guests talk about that today. But I would be remiss not to mention that our former IT director, Mr. Rob Maroney, who navigated the IT portfolio here for many years, did an amazing job in doing so with the amount of initiatives. And there's a slide in this presentation that will just demonstrate the overcapacity and undercapacity to deliver on the initiatives as we currently had them. And so Mr. Maroney did a great job in formulating the IT roadmap. Mr. Maroney was wearing two hats. He, and we're so thankful, is now the director of our strategic initiatives branch, which the board will receive a presentation on in the coming months. However, he was able to navigate the roadmap along with Mr. Ventura to get to the state where we are today. And I think you'll be very impressed with it. In short, to say that we have the best 1-2 punch in all of policing in Ontario in terms of our IT and strategic initiatives. And putting these two components together, I think that you will find that we have great focus. And so I will share my screen, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Payette and Mr. Ventura.
Good morning, everyone. If I could just introduce myself very briefly. So as the deputy had mentioned, I am the new IT director for Peel Regional Police as of November. But in terms of history, I'm in my 15th and a half years Peel Regional Police. So I am part of the family, if you will. And I worked under Rob Maroney for about the last 10 years directly. So very much have seen the history of where we've been at Peel Police and kind of where we need to move forward. So in this slide, I really want to get across the message of it's really critical for us to have one vision and one strategy. I think rightly so, we focus on a vision from an organizational perspective, which is critical, but it's even more critical that that vision trickles down throughout the organization and permeates the organization so that we are all on mission and on target. This is our one vision for our IT that falls in line with our strategic plan, which is our people, our work, and our community. I think what's really important to understand is those three pillars, our people, our work, and our community, are largely impacted by the use of information technology and communication technology. We are in the era where all businesses are now digital businesses. Regardless of your line of work, even in a service-based business like policing, it is underpinned by policing technologies. In some ways, those policing technologies are quite mature, things like mobile radio, which has been around for a number of decades, to some newer technologies that we will be talking about a little later today, including smartphones and things like that. So it's really important to have a modern strategic plan to modernize the police service with the goal to guide decision-making, be innovative, and hit on the principles that are going to make us effective as an organization. We've built a business capability model, which is a perspective that represents our organization's foundation on operations, independence of the organizational structure, process, or people. So the structure needs to be bigger than any one of those individual items, even though technology is comprised of people, process, and technology. The business capability model represents the competencies the organization requires in order to achieve our goals, the desired outcomes, by enabling the organization, again, that people, process, and technology, which forms the view of our business architecture. How do we operate as a business? How do we take these digital assets and make ourselves a better police service? Business capabilities help bridge the business strategy and deliverables to actionable technology and information programs. What are the things that we need? What are the pieces that we need? The business capabilities inform what technology and information needs are required to support the strategy. The initiatives required to achieve those technology and informational needs can then be identified, prioritized, create the strategic roadmap for IT and for implementation. The future state capabilities are also included in the model based on PwC's experience, interviews, and industry-leading practice. A business capability defines what we do at our core, which is policing and public safety. This differs from how we do it, or how things are done and the way they are done. A business capability should really be abstracted from the operational organizational model. Next slide, please. So this is a current state, really a snapshot, if you will, of the types of things that IT spends our time on. So looking at this pie chart, there are three significant pieces in here. One of them being the red, which represents project work, which is the amount of time that we spent working on net new initiatives to help drive the business forward. When I say a net new initiative, I mean it's a new technology implementation or business capability that we've implemented that's underpinned by technology. The blue piece of pie here represents production support. So what this represents is how much effort does the IT department spend on maintaining existing systems. So one of the things that I find that is challenging being an IT leader is there's always a demand for net new services, which is absolutely appropriate and critical to drive our business and transform our business forward. But we have to remind ourselves that we also have, at this point, well over 150 systems that we have to care and feed on a regular basis. Things like doing regular security updates, making sure the data is backed up properly, making sure when users are having problems accessing the system that we take care of that. That ties very closely into the orange piece, which is the state of repair and maintenance. So this is, again, on a regular basis, doing things like replacing old servers that are out of warranty and not serviceable anymore with new equipment. So between those two pieces alone, we spend more than 40% of our time servicing old systems. In IT world, that's really called technical debt. What is the old technology that we have to service to make sure that we keep running what the lines of business services that we're doing today, in addition to the new things that we need, things like, again, smartphones and other modern capabilities to drive us forward. So one thing that I'd like to speak about is the size of Peel Police's IT department in comparison to other organizations. So according to Gartner Research, which you may or may not have heard of, they're an IT think tank, and they provide services known globally, and they do a lot of research on this. According to their numbers, the average staffing ratio of IT to the rest of the business employees is about 5.2 across all industries. So that's including banks, insurance, even retail. Across all lines of business, about 5.2% of their staff are dedicated to IT. At Peel Regional Police, our staffing ratio in 2020 was 2.6%, and in 2021, it's going to be 2.5%. So we are smaller than other IT departments, but I want to say small but mighty. We are, I think, in my humble opinion, still able to achieve a fair amount of what we need to do. We can't do everything for everybody, but we do believe that we're hitting on the key deliverables that the organization needs. We will do more with what we've got, but the one clear thing that has been a struggle for us is with scarce resources in the way that we have to be laser focused on the things that are important. And that's been one of our challenges over the years, is that we have not been focused. So next slide, please. So the vision of IT needs to be expressed with emphatic nature due to our previous state: no vision, no focus. We had many, many projects on the go. And when I say me, I mean us as an IT organization had more projects than we could practically keep up on. And in order to drive our vision, our organizational model of to be the most connected and technologically innovative police service in Canada, we need to focus on the things that are important to us. Yet at the same time, we have to keep an eye on the old systems. When I say old systems, the existing systems, in order to make sure that we can continue to drive forward. So our vision and our objectives, the feedback for those was driven largely by our senior executive team, but not just the executive team, cross-section of members in the organization, including the chiefs and the deputies, the Strat Initiatives Director, and myself as the IT Director, the group of IT staff. So they were consulted to learn from grassroots, what are the IT challenges that we have, and how can we improve ourselves? Directors and superintendents outside of IT and outside of Strat Initiatives to how they run their lines of business. We also spoke to constables. We also spoke to the connected community, and I believe a number of board members were consulted on this as well. And there was interviews with internal and external partners and experts in the IT field. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of all the projects, and I'm going to say all kind of in air quotes. These were all the projects that we had capital funding behind them. So these were projects that had a price tag associated with them and had capital dollars allocated. The reason why I'm making that distinction is because there are a number of projects that we do as an IT department that do not have a price tag up front. And it's important to understand that in running projects, we don't keep count of the hours that were spent on it, but there's not necessarily capital costs. So for example, if we were doing an upgrade of an existing system and our onboard staff, our regular Peel Police members were doing the upgrade, that would appear as no capital cost because we own the software, we have the licensing agreements to upgrade the software, and then it's our staff time to upgrade that. This is strictly the buckets, if you will, of capital funding that was allocated. And as you can see on this list, specifically on the left-hand side, about halfway down, there's a number of projects there from 2015, from 2016, 2017, 2018. So these are projects that had been sitting for a long time, and we were not able to focus on them because, again, as you can see, even from this abbreviated list, there was so much to focus on. There's too much to focus on. And splitting our staffing resources in order to try to accomplish any of these things really left us not accomplishing as much as we could have with a laser focus. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Charles Payette.
Thank you, Tony.
Charles, sorry, Charles, just before you go, I have not done Tony Ventura service here, the proper service, as I included this image and spreadsheet for the board and the community to review. We actually had 183 ongoing projects in the IT Innovation and Technology Department, which we would all understand is completely unmanageable. And not only is it unmanageable and are we not able to execute on the core needs, we are only keeping the lights on. We're not able to be innovative. And so really focusing in, and this is what Charles will speak to in a moment, is prioritizing the needs to not only achieve our vision, but have PRP known as the leading innovator in technology in policing. And Charles, I'll move over to the next slide and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy, for topping that up.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to come speak to the board on the amazing work that PRP is doing right now. As you can see in the previous slide, 183 ongoing initiative in IT is honestly a lot. It's practically impossible to maintain. Working alongside PRP, what the PwC team did is literally create 3 different types of initiatives. Sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. 3 different types of initiatives. We did that as a first filtered. So basically, if the initiative was not necessary for the day-to-day work of PRP, if it was not an initiative that would replace or enhance the existing technology, or if it was not something that was strategic or innovative, the initiative was simply cut out of the list. By doing so, we reduced the list significantly, and it was then easier for us to develop the initiative criteria that would help us prioritizing the resources and the priorities of all these initiatives. In the initiative criteria, we divided into 3 other brackets, 3 criteria on how PRP will evaluate each IT initiatives that is coming in. So first of all was the impact. Will that be aligned with the organizational service delivery of policing, the policing experience for officers, the community safety and well-being enhancement? Will this have an impact on enabling efficiencies in policing? Each of that received a weightage, and it was then an opportunity for us to score these initiatives. We looked at the effort needed for that initiative. Effort we divided into 5 subcategories. And the first thing was, is there an ability for in-house to provide on that initiative? The complexity, will that impact a lot of organizational change? Will that require a lot of organizational change management? And is that initiative dependent on ongoing initiatives? For example, integration with other systems. And the duration of the implementation was also taken into consideration when we scored each initiative. And the final one that you see was the cost. The criteria around cost was divided into 2, if we can say 2 different categories. First, the implementation cost, so the total implementation cost, and then the ongoing costs related to the initiatives. Once we ran all of the initiatives through the prioritization matrix, we ended up with initiatives aligned with what you see right here, that it's the business capability of PRP. We cross-referenced the prioritization matrix with all areas of the organization using business capability models. What you see in red are the business areas where they were considered priorities for the initiatives. Yellow were in a current state acceptable, and green were already no necessarily immediate need for technology. what is important to see here is that all the initiatives were presented to and were measured to be aligned to the prioritization and to be aligned with the strategic plan of the organization. Initiatives that were not aligned with community safety and well-being plan, strategic plan, strategic organizational plan, were simply not considered or simply put on the side to allow the IT to focus on the priorities and focus on the initiatives that will impact PRP in the Peel region. I will give it back to Tony to present. To present the roadmap.
Thank you. So the outcome of this study was this 3-year innovation and technology strategy and roadmap. And as you can see, it's been prioritized based on the criteria that we've talked about. And I want to speak specifically to the left-hand side of this chart of the immediate term, the 6 to 12 month timeframe. So in looking at this, because we have now been able to be focused as an ID department, we've actually made some very great strides in some of these initiatives. Mobile devices to frontline officers. When I took over in November, that was my biggest priority to get done, and again, in conjunction with what we see here. And we were able to deploy 1,000 smartphones to our frontline officers in about 3 weeks through the month of February. So we ramped up, we made sure we lined our deployment strategies and lined up with platoon schedules and to minimize impact on the business. And we were able to do that very quickly, to the point of I've had other police services calling us and saying, how did you deploy 1,000 phones in such a little amount of time? We really put our foot down on the gas and understanding that this is important. This ties in very nicely to our second initiative on here, which is the body-worn cameras. While the body-worn cameras can be run without without the smartphone, there really is a lot of value add in having the officers combined. So we looked at it as a prerequisite. So we're now in a point where every frontline officer, with the exception of a handful of people who are on extended leaves or not available, have a device. So not only have we enabled them to further build on that platform by rolling out body-worn cameras, but we also now have the ability to collect other digital evidence. We have abilities now to communicate to all of our officers much better than we did before. They now have full access to email and their calendars, and text messaging and phone calls, a bunch of capabilities that just weren't there before, that the rest of us in our regular daily lives, we're very much tethered to our phones. I've already touched briefly on the next one, the digital evidence management system. So with the software that supports the body cameras, now officers are able to take pictures and video statements on their mobile devices and upload them to our secure enclave so that we can have proper chain of custody on that evidence, so that when it turns to court, it has integrity and will stand the test of judicial process. Real-time operations center is something that we've been working on very closely as well. We've implemented quite a dearth of technology on that in outfitting that room. And I won't go line by line, but there's a lot of these things that we're now able to focus on this smaller number rather than a number north of 100, and that we're actually able to deliver on. And a number of these have already met their milestones. The business intelligence capability is already in its second sprint. It's already seen its first line of business value. Facial recognition, the contract is very close to being implemented. CCTV cameras, that project is being worked on as well. So again, with having that focus and knowing where we are on our roadmap, that allows us to, again, focus our resources, but also lets us look for, okay, if we know what's coming in the medium term and the longer term, if there are any prerequisites that we need to do from building an IT foundation, for example, do we need a faster internet connection to support something that's coming in the medium term? Then we can start doing some of that work. Do we need additional server capacity? Then we can start doing those acquisition processes. And we can start building forward and taking these incremental steps so that we can achieve this digital transformation roadmap as outlined here. So with that, I'll turn it to Deputy O'Doherty.
Thanks, Tony. And we just have a couple more slides. And I don't think I need to go over too many of them. Tony did a good job on the last slides, but providing that focus that that we received from the strategy. And what I should say is the roadmap is flexible. There will be times when we need to be nimble and flex from it, given what may occur here within the confines of the police facilities or in the community, or confluence of items, that the roadmap is designed to be flexible to meet those needs. So if you can reflect back on that chart with what would have been 182 projects, we know that we were not able to deliver, and we were under delivering on the key projects. And so as Tony mentioned, he did himself a little bit of a disservice. We have 1,200 mobile devices, smart devices deployed with this zero touch deployment model, which is very unique, which is why PRP is being looked at as leaders in this deployment. It's not just through the device, but it's on the process of deployment. Tony, congratulations to you and your team, and then the effective management of it. Of course, you can see the body-worn camera, the beginning of the deployment at our airport and the testing, and you'll be provided an update on body-worn camera project in a moment. What you see here is also our real-time operations center and our analytics bureau have teamed up to create a frontline dashboard to, in real time, better manage our resources so that we can direct our officers out in the field more strategically and efficiently in terms of their response. What I should add here is that this dashboard is also iterative and will reflect, and soon in a few weeks will reflect, mental wellness issues of officers who have been to too many critical incidents in a short period of time. And so that a critical incident commander can recognize that and ensure that an officer isn't being overly stressed. And of course, what we have here, and I'll speak about in a moment, is the deployment of our P25 radio system, the enhancement of it. Now, this is an expensive item in IT and the current maintenance, and we do that, and Tony had mentioned before, on behalf of our regional partners as well. From our staffing complement here at PRP, we have 6 IT staff directly associated with an organization called VCOM, which manages technology for our partners, including our fire, critical infrastructure partners. And that does not translate to everyday IT operations that would occur here. So they're actually removed. And of course, our online records check, which we had mentioned before, and due to COVID restrictions, we had to move quickly and provide the community a safe and effective manner of receiving those online records check for either volunteer work positions or what have you. And then supporting the alternate work arrangements during COVID, ensuring that we had a safe workspace, ensuring that we had the technology to meet the demands to service our community and our members with providing sufficient alternate work arrangements. And that's simply not just opening up a laptop at home, that's providing the critical security requirements, bandwidth, structure, and process around each and every one of those. Of course, we have our NG 911 committee, and I have recently taken over as the OACP chair for all of NG 911 for the province, advising the Ministry of Solicitor General on that. And we have been able to procure, and we are well ahead of the curve in terms of NG 911 implementation here in Peel Region. We have our move to our new computer-aided dispatch solution, which is a massive overhaul of how we protect and ensure the safety of our community, and that is ongoing. And of course, we all know about our body-worn camera digital evidence management system. One thing we don't pay enough attention to, and we certainly need to get the board completely up to speed on, is that the Peel Regional Police and their partners have their own dedicated data communications network, which is only one of 2 in all of Canada. And this provides critical data communication to our members when other data communications goes down. And this is one of our focal points and delivery and execution points of our IT staff. And of course, what just appeared on the screen should really not mean a lot to anyone, but this is the backbone of security. This is what allows PRP to interact with the community safely and effectively without compromising information of our community, and of course, the sensitive nature of information we have contained therein. So with that, hopefully we were able to provide you the focus of our Innovation and Technology Department, Command Area, and our IT Department.
Thank you, Anthony. And Chair Tia, I just wanted to highlight the remarkable work by the team. Thank you to Charles at PwC for coming alongside of us. I think we'd all agree in the last 14 months, the transformation that's happened within PRP has been so significant. And I think what we'd like to highlight is that it's rooted in being thoughtful and strategic, and versus just pushing out the bright, shiny things. So what the outcome is what you've seen in a detailed presentation, is that we're on that way. And I've told you, and we pull no punches. We want to be the most progressive, innovative police organization in Canada, if not North America. And we're just pleased to be able to show you behind the scenes, to give you the full confidence that we're being good stewards of what we've been blessed to have as a result of our budget. But we are using that just not to meet standards, but to be leaders. And I want to thank Anthony, Tony, Rob Maroney, and the collective team for that work.
Thank you, Chief, and I'll just echo that. Thank you, Charles, Tony, and Deputy Chief Wardy. For the board, are there any comments about the presentation? Okay, go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you to Tony and Deputy Chief Anthony for real excellent work, and really shows how when we talk about modernization, it's a buzzword these days. All organizations go through modernization. One thing that I'm really interested in, because all the sort of work that you do, consolidating and building this sort of alignment with our strategic priorities and so on. These programs and initiatives are only as good as the people that you have. So speaking to, the type of sort of, training that goes into this, getting for people in terms of awareness of how to use these applications, how to interface with these technologies, the type of sort of back-facing support that you have when it comes to the technical issues. Is it something, so there's a lot of sort of manpower that goes into this, and I know we sometimes lose that, but if you can just sort of articulate and maybe describe a little bit, that type of sort of support that's there, which is the underpinning of this modernization.
Well, thank you. And I think that's an excellent question. And, to highlight, and I'm going to use the body-worn camera project as an example to address your question, is that there's a common misconception that once you negotiate with a vendor to provide a service, that essentially the project can be up and running. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, with a body-worn camera project, Peel, I will say, will have the fastest, but I believe also the most thorough, considerate deployment of body-worn camera. But it's not just about taking a camera out of the box and hanging it on a police officer's vest. There is a change management process that has to occur, not just with thought and process with our members, but on the back end, from an IT perspective, there's a complete reconfiguration, re-systems engineering approach to how we collect that data, where it goes, and then how we ensure the integrity of that data. Now, when you overlay all of this with the community, the extensive community engagement and feedback we are having, we are certainly doing things differently. And this impacts the way IT approaches or would normally or traditionally approach a project. So thank you for highlighting that. There are a considerable amount of considerations that go into this, including IT training, because as you would know, this would be the first time that information and technology have deployed such a system.
Thank you.
If I may just top up on that, and this is something that Deputy O'Doherty and I have spoken about at length, that part of minimizing the change impacts that we have on people is choosing smart and appropriate technology. And there's an expression that I've used, and the Deputy will remember it, is an app is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not that good. So think about all the apps that we download from the App Store all the time. Has anyone ever read the instructions? You just kind of intuitively click around and figure it out. That's where our policing technology needs to evolve to. So there's 2 points to this. Is one, we have to be very smart in the technology that we choose to make sure that it's fit for purpose and fit for use of our officers. The second part of that is we have to make sure that when there are going to be cases where we are putting out complex systems and we do need to bring in officers for training. We are very alive to the fact as IT that every hour an officer spends in a classroom is an hour that they spend not on the street doing police duties. So we're very judicious in actually choosing those opportunities of when officers need to come in. And one of those ways is making smart technology choices.
Thank you. Len, you had a question. You're on mute.
Directing my question to Tony in regards to your classroom training, and assuming the majority of your staff is from within the service, do you feel that you have sufficient trained staff, or do you feel that you would benefit from having more civilians with your very small ratio of 2.5%? Are they sufficiently trained, or are you somewhat limited by selecting from the service?
So I'd say we're very fortunate in terms of training. We do have sufficient training dollars to allow all our staff to train on the newest technologies. One of the challenges that we're going to be facing really soon as part of this digital transformation that we are embarking on, we will be implementing technologies that are net new to policing, things that are being used outside like Office 365 and more cloud technologies. We are going to have to undergo a massive reskilling of people. So people who are maybe managing servers and network switches on premise, we will need to reskill those people to have different IT skill sets in order to support cloud environments versus not. So that's very much a part of our challenge is, again, from the people change, we focus on, yes, it changes our business and it changes the officers, but it actually does change the mix and the skill set required by IT. So yes, again, at this point, we're from a training perspective good, but in the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to have to undergo a large reskilling. As far as being that our ratio is what it is, could we use more staff? And I think that's a bit of a loaded question because no one ever turns down more staff. However, what I would say is it should be tied to what our business objectives are. If we need to move our digitization faster, then we need more resources to do it. If we are comfortable with the pace that we're moving, then for the time being, I think modest increases year over year to try to keep pace with where we are is certainly an effective strategy.
I think what I'm suggesting for the cost of a first-class officer, the skills of Office 365 would be well overpaid, and you could hire fairly qualified IT individuals in the workplace at that wage level.
Yes, that's correct. That's a good wage for an IT worker. Yes.
And you wouldn't have to train them.
Yes, I mean, when we recruit, we obviously recruit people who already have the skill sets that we need. But there's, I think, still no getting around. We're going to have to transform as an organization, given that we're going to have many more different technology needs required, and we're going to have people who are going to be, if you will, surplus. So the idea would be to keep these members who have been here for a while, understand our culture. That's a great point of one of the things that we actually struggle with is you can hire people who have very good technical skills, but understanding our core business of policing is actually a big part of it. And we find in new staff members, it takes probably 9 to 12 months before they understand the business of policing and the ramifications of some of the things we're doing, especially when you're talking about 911 systems and phone systems. These things are mission critical and in a lot of cases, tied to people's life. So yes, there's certainly a big advantage in hiring people from externally to get us a big shot in the arm. But there's also some advantage to keeping our existing people and reskilling them.
Yeah, and I suppose there also is a small security issue when they're not a sworn officer with access to a lot of computer information.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to clarify that all of the staff members in IT are civilian members. They're not uniform members, in case that's not clear.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually have a fairly wide pay scale for all of our civilian members. That is, it varies based on their job position and requirements, from entry level onto some of our higher end staff make about what a sergeant would make. But they are all civilian staff and they are paid differently depending on their specific IT expertise.
Sounds like you're doing a great job, Tony. I thank you very much, and thank you, Deputy. We appreciate all the effort you're putting forward. It sounds like you're doing a smack up job on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Any other comments? Okay, so I call to move to receive the presentation. Can I have a mover? Councillor Medeiros, and seconded by Mr. Howell. All in favor? It's been carried. Thank you very much, Deputy Chief and your team. Thank you, Charles, for joining today. We will now move on to new business. Item number 3, collection of identifying information, 2020 annual report. Chief, would you like to speak to this report?
Sure. I think, you know, we have seen this report, or the board would have seen this report on an annual basis. It's part of our commitment to comply with the regulations. You know, on a informal basis, I guess the application of the process and the regime that the province has put into place, as you can see, is not applied at the front line. We had 0 incidents where the regulated paradigm has been applied. I think that speaks for itself. If there's any questions, I'd happily unpack that. But it, I think, is a consistent trend across most police organizations in Ontario. This is not an unusual, thing to see on an annual basis.
Chief, if I could interject, and through the chair, I would like to tell you that in 2018 we had 1 instance, 2017 2, and 2019 3. As part of our work with the Ontario Human Rights Commission, we have also undertaken to destroy that data on a time-based schedule, and we have already done so in terms of the retention period. So we continue to review this information, knowing that 2020 we did not have any. That won't be a concern when we receive it, but it is certainly one of the recommendations in line with the Ontario Human Rights Commission project.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, not seeing any. Can I have a mover to receive this report? Mayor Crombie, seconded by Ron Chada. All in favor? Okay, it's been carried. We'll move to item number 4, body-worn camera status report. Deputy Chief Eduardi, please proceed with your update.
Sorry for those I just made dizzy there. I apologize that. We are continue to be on track, on time, and on budget in terms of a body-worn camera deployment. We are, in fact, ahead of schedule. We continue to be fortunate enough to avoid any COVID impact or related setbacks, and we continue to mitigate those by having backup plans in place. We have approximately 400 officers trained. We have not, and I'll just reiterate, deployed the cameras to all our divisions. We continue to engage the community and our membership for feedback. We have tested the camera and deployed it at our airport division on a limited basis to understand the technology and to implement lesson learned as we move forward, and so that we do have a fulsome approach. We have worked closely with the Information Privacy Commission. There has been no concerns related to that. We also have recently begun the pilot testing of an in-car camera solution on a very limited basis. We have not yet deployed that as part of our vendor contract, but we will target our road safety services branch to pilot that initiative in the next week or 2. Again, same vendor, part of the contract and roadmap in relation to body-worn in-car camera provisions. Again, continue to be on track, and there are no other updates at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? seeing any. Can I have a mover to receive this report? Mr. Boughton and the seconder. Mr. Howell, thank you. All in favor? Okay, it's been carried. So this concludes the public portion of our Peel Police Services Board meeting. We will adjourn for 5 minutes, and then we will move into our in-camera through Zoom conferencing. Thank you very much. Thank you to the public for joining, and everyone take care.